Hey everyone, Zach here, and welcome to the 46th lesson of this RTS tutorial series. In this video, we will work on bringing our resources, once we've harvested them, from the resource location to a building. We will also clean up one other thing with return resources after deleting a building. That said, fire up your editor and let's get started.
Alright, so we have a few things we're going to take care of before we get into the main lesson. So first I'm going to show you a little bit of a issue that I noticed. So if we hit play and spawn in any building, I'm just going to do a factory, so it's the first one on the list, and we open up the profile, notice that our resources are reduced like they should be. We hit delete, we don't get our resources back. So let's take care of that. And what we're going to do to fix this is go into our building info widget. It's really a UI, not a HUD. I got to rename these. And on delete building, we're going to change some things. So first, break this connection. So hold control, drag off and break it. We're just going to move all this away for a moment. Hold the S key down and click to get your sequence. Plug that into there. And then we need a total of 4 pins. There we go. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to grab our player controller reference. And we're going to do it the same way we did here. We're just going to duplicate this up here with Control W. And we want to get from our player controller our building reference. So we want to set building. And the reason why we're setting building is we're going to use the return resources function. Well, if you remember in the last video when we fixed up the issue with returning resources when we delete a building the normal way, you don't have to follow this part. I'm just showing you the logic. If we go into, let's get rid of that. If we go into our return resources, on delete building, which is up here, we've changed this to be building, and we need something in this variable for it to work. So we're just going to set the building, and the way we do that is by grabbing the controller, getting that setting, and then taking from our building reference, putting a reroute in here. You don't need to use a reroute, you can just grab off the pin there, and plugging building into the building reference. There we go. So that's step 1. The next bit we need to do is we then need to return the resources. So again, we can take this same setup here. So we're just going to we're going to break this pin there and take these 3 nodes and we're going to plug that into the then 1 pin. So set the building, return the resources. Just going to give myself a bit more room. There we go. Next, we need to close the widget. So we're going to break that and just move this up here. Finally, what we need to do is we need to release all occupants and destroy the actor. So just plug that into there. And we'll move these over here. Okay, now if we hit compile, you're going to run into a little bit of an error. And this is a rather easy one to resolve. So if we click on this, it brings us to our get unit names. For some reason, it'll create a second reference to the vehicle HUD. All you have to do to get rid of that error is click refresh node. It's gone. Hit compile again, then hit play. All right, so 1.5, 1.2, spawn the factory in, delete. So the same for the barracks. 1.3, 1.2, and delete, and we're back to our starting resources. Okay. So that takes care of that issue. Now, on to the main part of what we need to do for this video. We need to get the resources to a resource building. So the first thing I want to do is, just so I can test this out, I'm going to spawn in, at the start of the game, a resource building. And our 2 resource buildings will be our factory and our silo. We're going to start with the factory just so we have that on screen, because we're going to do other things with this later on. We're going to set to is built. So there is a mesh to it, doesn't need to be constructed. And then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a function that we'll use multiple times. This function right now looks like it's only going to serve one purpose, but we will use it for a lot of things as this series goes forward, especially in this section. So go into your player controller, and we're going to create a new function in here. Now, for those of you who watch my live stream of me prepping this, I put this in directly in the main graph. I am actually just going to create a function for that instead, and this function will be update building list. And yes, technically anything on that main graph is also a function. I just prefer doing it this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to get all actors of class. And the class we want to get, so this returns every actor of a particular class and its children and its grandchildren. So we want to get our RTS building master. We want to get everything of this type. And we're going to create a loop from this, and this loop will have two outputs. And right now we're only going to have one because we're only worrying about one type, and that's our constructed building. So we're going to grab out actors and do for each loop. So for each actor of this class currently on the map, we want to know, is it built? So we're going to do is built. So we're going to get that. And if this is true, then we want to put this into an array. So we'll do a branch. So hold down B and click on the screen. Plug that into there. Plug the conditional statements together. And I'm just going to line that up a bit more. And if this is true, then we want to add unique. What we're going to add into this unique is our array element. So go ahead and plug that into there. And let's just neaten this up a tiny bit. Now we will have one for the false as well, and that will be for our buildings not yet constructed. But for now, we're just going to worry about our constructed building. So we're going to do promote to variable, and this will be list of constructed buildings. Again, if you watch my live prep of this, I had a different name there, I realize. As you can see, I change my names as I do the series. Alright, so this is returning a list of constructed buildings. Off the completed, we have our return node. Oops, not return resources. Return node. There we go. So now that that's set up, what we need to do is we need to actually bring the resources to the building. Now, I thought about doing this in multiple steps, but what we're going to do is we're going to iterate something we've already worked on as well. Otherwise, we're going to run into a lot of issues where we have to iterate 3 different sets of functions instead of just iterating one and then creating another that looks right. So we're going to start not with bringing our resources to the building, but to updating how our resource harvesting is handled. So if we go into our units, go into our harvester unit, and then go into our start harvesting, we are going to make a lot of changes in this. So what we're going to do to begin with is we are going to take everything after this target resource type and break, and we're going to just move this off to the side for now. We'll come back to this later on. We'll actually leave the return node there. We might need to move it further out later on. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is actually set the type of resource we're harvesting. So we're going to grab this and we are going to do a, oops, actually that's incorrect. We're going to do a switch. So right click, switch, enum, resource type. So we want to do switch on resource type. We're going to plug this pin into there and the execute into there. That way we're getting the resource type from the target, and then in this blueprint we're going, all right, which one is it really? And now we're going to replicate this. We're going to add a few more steps in here to make this work a little bit better. So we're going to create a couple of new variables to get this to work correctly. And we're going to create about 4 new variables, I think. I can't remember quite what the number is. You'll see as we go, though. Unfortunately, I'm just blinking as I stare at my prep file. So take these starting pins all the way up to the division, but don't take the harvested. We're going to replicate it up here. And off wood, we're going to drag and plug into there. We're going to put a reroute into it. There we go. Everything else remains the same on this. Now the first new one we need to do, and we'll do one as well for OR, is we need to create one for the current amount of wood we've harvested. So we'll create a current wood harvest. This will be a type float. We'll create another one, which will be current OR harvest. And then we will do two more, which will be wood harvested and OR harvested. So current is literally the amount of resources we are currently harvesting from the source we're at. So if we have a tree with, only 3 units of wood left, and we have an inventory max of 5, and we harvest all 3, well, we can go and take 2 more units from another tree. We don't want to reduce 5 units total from that tree. We want to reduce what we're currently harvesting from that tree. So we're going to take our current wood harvest, plug it into there. So we're now setting our current wood harvest to what used to be our total harvest before. We're dragging that into there. So we're going from the execute into there. The next thing we need to do is we need to update how much we've harvested. So then we're going to get our harvested, and we are going to do float plus float. Technically, it'll be a float plus float plus float. So we now have 3 floats going into there. Let's move this out just a bit further because we need a little bit more room. And what we're going to add in is our OR harvested. So grab your total OR harvested, plug that into there. We need to get our total wood harvested because we haven't set this yet. It isn't going to matter what this number is. And then we do need to get that number as well, what our current wood harvest is. There we go. Then we can do this entire branch where we take our max inventory and our harvested and compare it to make sure we have enough inventory and or enough space. And if we don't, we're going to stop the harvest. We're just going to duplicate that up there. And we're going to plug that branch into our harvested. Next, once this is done, once we've finished harvesting, we want to update our wood harvested so that our total wood harvested is now the total of what it was originally. So if this was 0, say 0 plus what we harvested. And if this is 3, then this becomes 5. That way, if we go to the next tree, our wood harvested could become 5 as well. So we're going to take our wood harvested, plug that into there as a setter, and then we're going to drag off of this and do float plus float. And we're going to add our current harvest to our current wood harvest, that is, to our wood harvested. There we go. And then just drag this out a little bit further. And then plug your wood harvested into the end harvest trigger. Put another reroute into here. And then drag this down. All right. We are going to then get rid of this because we don't need it anymore. We are going to take everything we've just done, highlight it all the way up into right before that last reroute, and we're going to duplicate it down here. And then just going to slide this so it lines up a little bit better with the last one we did. Plug that reroute into, plug that execution to that last reroute, and plug OR into the starting reroute. We need to make a couple of changes though. So let's just take our current wood resources and replace that with our current OR harvest, or sorry, current wood harvest with our current OR harvest. So just highlight it, drag it over, and place it on top, and it should change it out. We need to do the same for our, let me just fix that typo, I just noticed that. So that should be a capital H there, to turn that into 2 words. So we need to change our current wood harvest to our current OR harvest. So again, drag it out and just wait till it says make them equal. Oh, sorry, not that way. So it says replace actually. So change node to read. There we go. And then we have to do the same over here. We're going to change the entire set out to our OR harvested. take our ore harvested there as well. And then do our current ore harvest. All right. So that way we can have an inventory that's split between our ore and wood, but has the same max total across the two. Compile and save. All right, so let's go back to our event graph. And in our event graph, we're going to update some stuff in our reduce target resource. We're going to kind of replicate what we've just done. So let's open up our reduce target resource. And we're going to have another enum switch in here. So we're going to break this reroute right here, actually. We're also going to we're going to break all this reroute, so just delete it. We're going to move this off for now. Break that as well. Break that. And we're just going to drag this out of the way. Actually, we're just going to delete it. So off our target resource, we're going to promote to variable. Actually, undo that. We're going to promote to local variable, and this will be our resource type local. Oh, sorry, not resource type, our resource target local. So resource target local, and we can just move that up there for now because it's going to be in the way. We are going to drag off of this, and we're going to do a setter. So get your target resources and do switch on resource type enum, plug the execute into the execute. And then just line everything up nice and neat. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get our target resource local. And we're going to again do the wood first and then just duplicate it for the ore. We want to get the current resources. We want to take our current wood harvest and get that. And we're going to subtract the wood harvest from our current. So we're going to do float minus float. Plug those two into each other. And then let's put a reroute into this. We are going to set our current resource. And we're going to set it as being the value that returns from this subtraction. Put some reroutes in. That way we can make this look easier to read and keep the nodes from crossing over each other. We're going to plug the wood into there. So wood into the set current resource. I don't know why I just reselected that. That was weird to me. All right, there we go. And again, just lining things up so it's a little bit neater and nicer looking. The next thing we want to do is so we don't accidentally keep increasing this number of current wood, we want to reset this value to 0. So we're going to take our current wood harvest and we're just going to set it at the end there to 0. All right, let's find that at return node and drag that out here. Place that guy down there and then plug in your setter into the return. Put a reroute in. There we go. So highlight all of this all the way up into that last reroute, including that first reroute. Plug it in down here. And we're just going to line it up. And we're going to plug the ore. That's not lined up well. We're going to plug the ore into that first reroute. We are going to change our current wood harvest to our current ore harvest. There we go. We're going to change our current wood harvest over here also to our current ore harvest. We're going to plug that in. We're going to plug that into our reroute up there. And the last thing we need to do is we need to get our target resource local again. And because we've set it there, we need to pass it out here as well. So instead of just dragging things off or creating new new locals, we're just going to drag off of this and get current resource. Remember, what this is doing at the end is we're passing it out so we can check, are we at 0? Do we need to delete this resource? Control, compile, and save it. And the next thing we need to do then is go back to our event graph. We don't need to do anything on our destroy target because it doesn't matter what the target is. It's just checking, is the resource we're passing in 0? If it is, delete whatever this target is. So let's go back to our event graph again. We don't need to do anything here because we're clearing our target resource. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to reset my time harvesting to make it 0. So I'm just going to put that to 0. That way we don't have any weird issues where we suddenly every time we go to harvest a resource, we're suddenly harvesting faster. The next bit we're going to do is we're going to create a new function, and this will be the important function for finding our building. So we're going to do new function, and this will be get resource buildings. So we're going to make a call to our player controller. Now remember, our unit master BP has player controller in it, so the child does as well. So we have, sorry, it's controller reference is what we called it in the master. So type in controller ref and get controller ref, drag that out, and then we want to do update building list. So we're calling that function we just created at the start of this video, or the start of this section of the video. And then from this list, what we want to do is we want to get certain buildings. We only care about 2 types, as I mentioned. That list right now is returning every type of building there is that is built. So we want to get from here, list the array, list of constructed buildings. We want to do a loop through this to find certain types. So we're going to do for each loop, plug that into there. And what we're looking for is we're looking for our factories and our silos. But before we go any further, let's just do the completed. That'll be our return node. So the way we do that is we're going to drag off this array element, and we're going to do get class. And we do this twice, actually, because you can't have 2 pins coming off the get class, unfortunately. So get class. Let's put a reroute into here. Let's just do the second get class already. So get class. So we have it on there twice. Off the first one, we're going to do equal. So it's equal to class. And the class we're going to look for is our silo. So RTS silo BP. Off of our other one, it'll be the factory. So drag off equal. And then we'll do factory. RTS factory. There we go. All right. Now we're going to create a OR statement. So if it's either one of these, we want to add it to a list. We want to add it to a list of our resource buildings. So we'll create a branch. If it isn't one of these types of building, it's going to skip it because it's not going to be true, and it's going to go to the next building in our list. Fortunately, right now in our map, we only have 1 building. Again, we're going to do add unique. And what we're going to add to this list is the building that's currently being iterated. So grab this reroute, plug into there on the add unique. Let's just add a couple more reroutes in here to make this a little bit easier to read. There we go. And again, what we're adding in is our resource building. So let's create a new variable. So promote to variable, and this will be resource buildings. So now we have a list of buildings that are a viable target for our unit to go to. Let's move that over this way and go back into our event graph. Let's plug our get resource buildings into here. Now, let's say you have buildings all over the map. You have some near the unit and some far away. You don't want it to run to the first building on that list if that building's on the other side of the map. You want the unit to go to the nearest target. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the distance to the nearest building. So we're going to create a new function, and this will be get distance to resource buildings. And we're going to create an array of distances. So we're going to grab our resource buildings. We are going to do a for each loop here as well. So for each building type that is a resource building, we want to know where they're located. And we want to know the distance to that building from the harvester unit. So off array element, we want to do get distance to. Now, the target isn't the array element, that's the other actor. The target, so what is running this check, what we want to know the distance from is the target. And we want to know the distance from the harvester unit. The other actor is the distance to. So we want to know the distance from the harvester unit to the resource building. And because we're doing this in the harvester unit, self here refers to the harvester unit itself. We're going to just lower this down a little bit. And we are going to do add unique again. Plug the loop body into there. Just give us a bit more room there. And we're going to drag this out a tiny bit. And we're going to create a new array. And this will be a local array. This will be promote to local variable. This will be distances to buildings local. And then on our completed, we'll do our return node. Now again, you can either click this button to add in a variable or just drag in our array, get distance to building local, and drag the array pin into the return and it'll automatically add it. I am going to rename this. I am going to drop the local at the end there. So we are now passing out from this function a array that has a distance to all the buildings. So let's just move this over, go back to our event graph, plug that into there. And now we need to figure out which of these is closest to the unit. So while we have the distances, we need to tell the system to find the distance. And the way we're going to handle that is we're going to create a new function about that. So first, go to create a new function. This will be set nearest target. This will be a pure function. So click pure on the right corner there. So what we're going to add into this, if we select our starting pin there, our starting node, is a new parameter, and this will be building distances. This will be a float, and it will be an array. And also this is a pass by reference. There we go. So make sure you select pass by reference. We are going to come off of this pin here, and we're going to do min of float array. So the minimum value off this float array. We want to know what the index of that value is. So we're going to do get. We want to get a reference to it. And what we're really referencing is our resource buildings. So our resource buildings are going to have these differences. So we want to get that reference. And then we're going to come off this set nearest target first node there and do our return node. And into our return node, we are returning the building. So this will be nearest building. Compile that. Move it over. Go back to your event graph. So quickly just right click this and hit refresh. There we go. The error was the name hadn't updated correctly. So now what we want to do is we want to take our new pure function, drag it down here, plug in the distance to buildings into building distances, and then we want to set target building. So remember, that's in our unit master BP. So we just need to type in get target building, and we have our function there. So we're going to grab that, pass the reference building into there, and plug the execute pins into each other. So now it's going to set the target building as the nearest building. Next, and we might iterate this out in a later episode in this section, we are going to move the unit to that building. And the reason we might iterate it out is there's a small bug I'll show you. But first what we're going to do is we're going to get move to location or actor, plug the execute pin into there. And just like we did with our move to macro, what we need to do is we need to get a reference to the AI controller. So do self, off our self, get a AI controller, and plug that into our controller. And just like we did in the earlier video in this section, thanks to fixing the issue that Far East pointed out. What we're going to do is we're going to get our target building, the variable, not the function, and we are going to get entry point. And we want to get the world location of this entry point. And this world location will be passed into our goal location. So get world location, take the return value and plug that into our goal location. There we go. So now we'll move to the nearest target. So the next two things we need to do is we need to deposit the resources and then clear the inventory. That clearing the inventory might change later on. So we're going to create a new function called deposit resources. So deposit, hope if I can see what I was typing. Deposit resources. Sorry about how long that took me to type that in. Now we don't need the enum switch in here. Whatever resources a character is carrying, you know, they could have harvested, you could have had an early stop at a tree and then gone to a rock and harvested ore. We're going to deposit all the resources they currently have on them into the resource stockpile the player has. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a reference to our player controller. So controller ref, get it. And we're going to have the wood and ore resources set or get. We're going to get the wood and ore resources and set the ore and wood resources off of this single reference. So first, let's do wood resources, get it. Let's just drag this back a bit, put a reroute into here. Sorry, I'm trying to drag off the reroute, not drag the reroute. Drag off the reroute, and we want to get wood. We want to set wood resources. So we're going to set wood resources. Just going to line that up there. We're going to plug that into our deposit resources starting node. Put a reroute down here. Put another reroute down here. I am trying to actually move this reroute this time. There we go. We're going to need a little bit more room, so just drag that out a bit. Next, we're going to repeat this for our ore. So off this bottom reroute, drag out and do ore resources. We want to get the getter again. Put a reroute in, drag this up here, and go back to that reroute we just put in. Drag out and do set ore resources. Just drag this up here, plug the execute pin in from the first setter into the second setter, put another reroute in so it's a little bit nice and neat, and then off this final set, I didn't mean to move, we are going to do a return node. There we go. Now what we need to do in this is take our wood resource harvested, or wood harvest, and we need to add this to our wood resources. So we're going to do float plus float, which we're going to drag off the top one. So float plus float. There we go. Plug the result value into our set wood resources. So we're taking our current wood resources, we're adding what we have harvested, and then we're setting our wood resources to that new value. We need to repeat the same process for our ore as well. So go to our ore resources. We are going to drag off of here. We're going to do float plus float. And we'll take our ore harvested and plug it into there. And plug the result value into our ore resources. Compile and save. And let's go back to our event graph. Let's also close out what we don't need anymore. We don't need a lot of these. These are all set up. If we run into issues during the testing stage, we can open them back up. So on the end of our event graph, what we want to do now, so off, move, finished. What we want to do is we want to deposit our resources. Then we want to reset our harvested to 0. We could do this inside of the deposited resources. I'm putting it outside because I might change how this is handled later. I haven't quite decided how I want to handle this if you've hit your max and don't have the space for it. If you just want to destroy what they've harvested or do a stockpile on the unit. I am very tempted just to destroy it, and if I do so, I'm just going to move this inside the deposited resources. If I decide to stockpile it, I'm going to create a function to handle that at the end there. All right, so now down here, actually, let's test this out first. So compile, save. We're going to make one small change, and that is in our player controller. We are going to find our wood resources, and we're going to reduce this to 50, just so we can see the number change, because remember, it's doing some math that will reduce this to 1.5k. If we add in 5 wood, it's not going to see much. So plug that in. I'm going to go to my harvested and change my max inventory to 1, so it just is a shorter time to test this. Compile, save. Compile, save. Also, we're going to make an update to our widget real quick. So if you go into your main game UI, go to your graph, and we don't need the game speed. However, that is actually a wrong game speed, so let's just change that back to 0.25. Going to close that out. We're going to go to the get or resource, and on this bottom one, we are going to make one small change. We're going to break this pin. We are going to take from our OR, and we're going to do to text float. And we're going to change the values here to 1411. That way, we don't have a really long decimal at the end, and we can see up to 4 digits before the decimal. Otherwise, you'll see you have resources of 0.500312 or something like that, and that's just weird. Plug that float into, or to text float into your or text local, and we're going to repeat the same for our wood resource as well. So again, delete this node here, grab off the wood local to text. Again, 1411. And plug into there. Now you might want to go 2 decimals out after your decimal. I like only going 1 for this. If I were doing things at work, yes, it would be 2. When I say work, I mean my stats work. Compile, save, and let's test this out. So let's go into our main window, hit play. There we have 50 wood resource. Send our unit to the tree. And let's speed this up. So when he gets there, he harvests faster. And at some point, we will address making the units move faster when we speed up time and move slower when we reduce the time. So I'm going to pause until just before he moves, and I'll see you in a moment. All right, there he goes, moving to the nearest building, which is the factory there, and you see that it's gone up by 1. Let's test something else out. Ooh, I just got an error, so let me drag that onto screen. So access none when trying to do target type local. So let's go look at what's happening here. Let's go full screen on this. So runtime error, access none, trying to read property resource type local. So it's saying it can't get this information. So I'm going to pause for a minute and work out what's going on, and I'll be right back with you. All right. Actually, I knew what the issue was pretty much right away. It's what I was going to cover in the Friday video, but I think we need to cover that now. So what's going on is because the unit is leaving the collision area, and we have an early leave. So if we go into our resource master, what's happening is it's triggering this early harvest end. Oops, that opens our unit master. If we go to our harvester unit and go to our event graph, it's doing the same things here. And because we've cleared our target resource at this point, so it runs through the end harvest trigger, it clears the resource, this is empty. So when it gets to the second time, it goes, oh, there's nothing here, I can't do this. So the solution is, you can already see I've put the boolean in, so we're going to create a boolean variable called isInventoryFull. And what we're going to do is at the end of our start harvesting, you're going to set this value as true. So plug that into after the reroute, so after both the branches kind of been completed, or after one of the two branches, because you only do one at a time, has been completed, is inventory full to true. In our resource master, what we're going to do is we're going to break that for now. We are going to then check, is inventory full? We want to get it. You're actually going to break that as well. We're going to put a branch in here. And if this is true, then we don't want to do anything. If it is false, then we want to trigger an early harvest end. Put a reroute in. Plug that into there. Oops, sorry about that. I was just trying to move this a little bit over. There we go. Now there's one more thing I want to do. So this keeps us from double harvesting from a tree with the same unit, but I also don't want to harvest from a tree, have units harvesting from a tree when there are no resources there. Now, this isn't the most ideal way to do this because this will have some other gameplay issues, but it is to show the logic, and we can come back to this later on and update it. So in our harvester unit, when we go to our event graph, we need to check something before we reduce the resource target. We're going to break that pin there. We are going to drag this over, and we are going to check, does our resource target even have a value? So duplicate your resource target pin, or node, sorry. And we are going to, again, move this a little bit further down because we need a little bit more room. We are going to check for our current resources. We want to get it. We want to know, is this greater than 0? So is it greater than 0? If it is, then yes, we want to carry through with everything. If it isn't, then we don't want to reduce resources from it because it doesn't have any resources to reduce. We're saying there are no resources in it. So if there are resources, this value will be greater than 0. Thus, this will be true. And we can reduce our resources from that target. So we know the unit moves to the building, so we know that's working. Oh, the other thing I want to do is I also want to reset my harvest time at the end of this. So the next thing we need to do is make sure it's going to the nearest building. So let's go to our little map here, and let's put a building right next to the spawn-in area. Let's put a silo there. Let's go to our resource management and put a silo in. Is built. And let's hit play. All right, that silo is definitely nearer to the tree than the factory is. So let's go to there. And let's make sure it goes to the silo. Speed that up, and I'll resume the video right as the unit starts to move. There we go, the unit is moving, and it went into the correct building. Sorry about the jerkiness there, that was just because I was looking at the blueprint. And so now we have that working. So that takes care of what we need to do in this video. And the next video will handle how to calculate our starting resources. That said, sorry, our max resources. That said, if you've liked this video or this series, go ahead and hit that like button down below. It helps get this series out there and lets me know that I'm bringing you content that you appreciate and value. I hope that you guys feel comfortable joining the Discord community to ask any questions you have or posting any questions in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer any questions that I can. I might invite you to join the Discord to send screenshots and stuff. And I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial. Also, as always, I hope that you have a wonderful day.